Now, from the United States of America.
Hi, you have reached the Decahedron RPG Cast feedback line. Just start talking at the sound of the tone.
Hey, Joe, this is Jason. Just calling about your Traveler question. I will answer in the Play Forums, because I think the Play Forums is a good place to discuss what rules as written should be. But honestly, at the table, I'm not a huge Traveler player, and I've played for years, but I would just roll the damage each time. It doesn't take that long, and that way, mechanically, you don't have any kind of crazy stuff going on. So my answer for playing at the table is don't worry about that fixed damage thing. Just roll the damage each time. But I look forward to the discussion on the Play Forum so we can figure out what the official rules as written thing is, or how they determined it back in the day. Surely there's an answers, a questions column or something like that where people wrote into magazines or fanzines. Somewhere there's documentation where this question was asked back in the day and how it was handled. We need to find that.
Hey, Jason. Thanks for that reply. Everyone, that's Jason from the Nerds RPG Variety Cast. You should give his show a listen. It's a really great show. I tend to agree with you. That's the way I would go. That's the way I'm going to go, is just roll the damage every time. I was trying to do very rules as written this time. And sometimes, trying to figure out what the rules are trying to say is a challenge. And this is still very consistent with the rules because it says you can do that. It's just, the other way just seems so unfair to the players. I did post this question on the Play Forums. By the way, everyone, www.decahedron.com/boards. That is our little forums that we have where we discuss anything RPG related or anything podcasting related, just a little community we're trying to build, an old web forum type format. So, message threads and all that fun stuff. Anyway, yeah, there's a little conversation happening there, and that's the consensus there. And I also asked the question over at the Citizens of the Imperium board, which is kind of the de facto Traveler board. The very first response was, oh no, just assign it all against one stat, completely ignoring how amazingly unfair that is to the player. But everyone else, the consensus tends to be just like you said, just like I would do, which is roll the dice every time. And, do it that way. I mean, that's what you do with every other combat. Why should it be different? Because it's an animal. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Thanks very much for that call, Jason.
Hey, Joe. Daniel again. Again, I'm working my thread. I don't want to forget to reply. Because you actually asked me something else before, too, if I raise birds. I do not. I was just standing in my yard. I live in the Hudson Valley of New York, so there's mountains up here. They're not huge. But they're mountains nonetheless. I mean, they're called mountains, so I'll kind of get. I've definitely lived in places with no mountains, though. I lived in Miami, which is very flat, and I've lived in Massachusetts, which to the northern part, and New Hampshire, where there's mountains. So these mountains are medium-sized. They're not the Rockies, but I'll take them. There was something else. You mentioned about. I know that you said you didn't watch Voltron. Sorry, I should have framed that better. You were saying in G-Force they had some special power that when they all went together, they had it. Why don't they just use that from the beginning? And I was saying that Voltron was similar with their special power was turning into a robot, basically. So that's basically the same kind of thing. That's why I said that, and that was confusing. Anyways, I will listen to the rest of the episode.
Hey, Daniel, thank you for that call. Everyone, Daniel is from the Bandits Keep podcast, another great podcast. He talks a lot about using the old chainmail system as the default combat system for Dungeons and Dragons, which is a kind of neat podcast. Yeah, Daniel, in addition to the people I play, there are other people that give me feedback, but they don't want it on the air. I don't know, they're self-conscious or whatever. But, they'll tell me things, but they say, don't play it, don't read it, whatever. And one of the people, so I'm going to say what they said, but I won't say who it was. One of the people said, oh, no, that's a wild bird. I know from the sound of it that was a chickadee. So there you go. It was a chickadee. What else did you say? Oh, you said the Hudson Valley of New York and mountains. And I'm racking my brains to figure out what mountains would be the Hudson Valley of New York. So my first thought were the Adirondacks. But I don't think the Hudson goes that far north, right? Because I mean, that's why Albany's there, right? Because Henry Hudson, tried to settle in what would be modern New York City, but the natives there were hostile to him, no doubt knowing what their future would be. So he kept sailing up north till he couldn't sail any further, and that's how Albany got there. That was the beginning of Albany. So if that's as far as he could sail, that seems to me probably the limit of the Hudson. I mean, it probably goes a little more, but so is that still the Hudson Valley north of there into the Adirondacks? So then I'm thinking maybe it's down south towards the Catskills, although I normally associate the Catskills with Pennsylvania, but I do know some of them are in the New York area. So are the Catskills maybe? So I'm just going to tell a little completely ungame related story about the Adirondacks. And that was when I first met my wife, when she wasn't my wife back then, of course, about 10 years ago. During that first year, she said that she'd always wanted to go down like a bobsled run, which, that's kind of cool, whatever. I'd never considered it, but sure, why not? And I found out that in Lake Placid, they still do that. They have the Olympic bobsled run from when the Olympics were there, and they will take you on a bobsled through a portion of it. You can't do the whole thing if you're not trained, and of course we're not and everything. But so that was my very first Christmas gift to my wife, was a trip down over to Lake Placid to do the bobsled run there in the Adirondacks of New York. That's all I'll say for now. Thanks for that call, Daniel.
Hello, Joe. It's Michael, Chgowiz, continuing my listen through of your past episodes, and I just listened to your episode on space combat. Have a couple of comments, if you don't mind. First, I'm actually combining the idea of a sandbox and a PT-109 with a carrier. and how the heck am I doing that? Well, the way I'm going to be doing it is the players are the troubleshooters of the fleet. The commander of the Battlestar Lance has their hands too full, just trying to keep things together. They're certainly not going to be sending pilots out to scout around and to find out where's the best avenue, what's the best thing to do, where can we find food, where can we find water. They need troubleshooters for that, and that's what the PCs are going to get to do. They're going to, be able to decide where they want to go, what they want to do, how they want to do it, where they want to investigate, and as they solve problems, it'll help things with the fleet. So it's a work in progress. We're going to see how it goes with my new campaign. Space combat, though, that is an interesting one, and this kind of goes back into something that Dan Norton of Bandit Keep's podcast was saying back when we were discussing mass combat, because the issue with space combat is similar to one that you have with mass combat when you're trying to combine it in a role-playing game session, and that is not all players want to play war games or space combat games. Some players would love the crunch. They'd love the old Traveler vector style combat system across an entire living room floor. Other players are like, no, thank you. This is not what I'm all about. So it kind of comes down to what your group into as to what approach you're going to take with space combat. As a GM, I've come to realize that as I was searching for mass combat systems, I wanted something that could seamlessly transfer back and forth. You're in character mode, you're dealing with individuals, then you slide over into a battle where somehow the characters are either a part of a bigger thing or they are, a linchpin, or, they might not, get involved at all. I wanted some way to be able to do that if they did want to get involved. And I'm kind of running out of time here. Big hint, big spoiler, at least for D&D, I've taken on a very simple system where if the players want to, they can engage. But if they don't, I can quickly adjudicate it, because what matters to everyone is the outcome of the battle. Who was injured? Who wasn't? Did we win? Did we lose? What happened when we won or lost? And those kinds of things. And the outcomes that spur on further play. I don't want to take up too much time because I know you encourage a 3-minute limit. So maybe we'll talk later about it. Yeah. Okay, game on.
Hey, Michael, thanks for that call. Everyone, Michael is from, as he said, the Dungeon Master's Handbook podcast. Pretty neat little podcast. I've started listening to it recently. I've enjoying what I'm hearing so far. You said combining Sandbox with PT-109 with blah, blah, Black Sheep. I think that was the combination you said. Yeah, well, of course, Sandbox is compatible with all those things, right? Because that's actually what I have in mind as a setting. It is a sandbox or style play, sandbox style play. But I was like, what's the best way to do the spaceship battles within the sandbox? Then you said you're calling your people the troubleshooters, and then what you describe is very much a scout type mission. So I think I would have called them scouts, or maybe trailblazers, or pathfinders, or I don't know. But it's like the Old West shows where you have the scouts that go on ahead of, like in Wagon Train, they go out and scout the trail ahead and determine which way you should go, what trouble might be there waiting for the wagon train. But of course, now we're mixing westerns and Battlestar Galactica, that would never work. I mean, could you imagine Lorne Greene in a Western? Ha! There's going to be someone out there that doesn't get that joke. Anyway, yeah, the other thing I said, as you were saying all that, I'm like, the players are going to be kind of the wanderers, looking for the stuff. And I'm like, oh, they're going to be like nomads. No, they're going to be bullying no men. And that was one of my favorite episodes of the original series. So, yeah. Anyway, yeah, you say not all players might want to be involved in a space battle, and that's a great point. I'm just always afraid of leaving somebody out. When all the fun is happening around the table, and combat tends to last longer than some other scenes. Not a lot longer because I don't like involved combat systems. But when they do, there's Bob playing the botanist, Bob the botanist. And we're just skipping over Bob for like 5-10 minutes. And I feel bad about that. Although, yeah, as you said, maybe that's not a problem. And I guess the reason that doesn't occur to me is because very seldom in like a D&D type game do you have the character who doesn't get involved in combat. Whoops, combat's coming. I'm going to go wait in the other room. You know what I mean? But again, space game isn't a D&D game. So, maybe you might be onto something there. And then you talked about the vector combat system. I think the vector combat system in Classic Traveler is really neat, or as I call it, the triplanetary system, because Traveler was written around the board game Triplanetary, and that's all that was that combat system that had come out a few years before any role-playing games existed. And then when like the D&D craze happened, Mark Miller was like, hey, I have this board game about spaceship battles. I can just write a role-playing game around it. And that's where Traveler came from. I do have a copy of Triplanetary, but not the original. It's a reprint by Steve Jackson Games. I think I got it on a Kickstarter a few years ago. But yeah, I always wanted it to complete that part of my Traveler collection, just like I have Outdoor Survival for part of my D&D collection. But the vector combat. So while that is neat and everything conceptually, I do find that it's almost like a break from role playing. We're role playing. Whoops. Now let's whip out this other game and play a tabletop miniatures game. And I am not a fan of that. And I always found it ironic that Traveler had that, very countery, measure out inches everything rules for spaceship combat. But for man-to-man combat, they just use range bands, right? There's no left-right movement. It's either only forward or back. That always seems to be a bit of disconnect for me. But I do like that the starter edition of Classic Traveler, did the range bands for the spaceship combat. And so that's what I'm using for the upcoming game is the range bands from Starter Travel. Anyway, thank you very much for that call, Michael. I'm going to move on to another call because this is something else I could talk about all day.
Hey, Joe. Daniel fans keep calling in. Just listened to the episode with Keith. Really fun interview. Yeah, it's so great to, just try different games. And it seems like he was into that, too. Even if you never played them, I like the comic. It's just fun to make characters, in any game, really, just to see how the game flies. But I had a thought, and I don't know if it's something people did or do, as I am new to Traveler, as I said before, since you're talking about there could be gaps in the group, like, oh, we need a gunner or be an engineer, was it common, or did your groups ever sit down and just make a bunch of characters and then go, all right, well, we've made 6 or 7 characters here. What do we need? A gunner? Okay, I'll use this guy, and then put the other ones in a notebook for later or whatever. Did you do that kind of stuff, or is that just unheard of? Was it just kind of like, well, we go with what we got? I'm curious what, like, the culture of the gaming was in Traveler, let's say, when you first started playing, and even now, I guess. Just curious. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Anyways, great show. I'll talk to you later.
Hey, Daniel. Thanks for that call. So making characters just for the fun of it. Yes, making characters is very fun. It not only Traveling All games. In fact, I'm willing to bet I'm not alone in this by a long shot. But whenever I get a new game, that's always the first thing I do. Even before I read all the rules, is make a character. It's often the first chapter in the rule book. For Lucky 7, I've been going back and forth on this. Do I make the first chapter, how to make a character, but then, you really can't make a character because you don't know what those skill levels mean. So then you put skills first, and then it's a very chicken and egg type problem. I am leaning towards character generation going first. As for what we did back in the day, we're going to talk about gaps in the crew. Back in the day, so Traveler came out 1977. I don't think I did. Well, I wasn't even playing role-playing games until 78, I think, is when I got into D&D. Traveler came shortly after, but definitely first edition Traveler, so it was before 81, so probably 1980 or so. And in 1980, I'm like 15. We're talking about Joe the Munchkin, right? And, we're all, that adolescent gamer mentality. So we were power gamer extremes. We were munchkins. And why the heck do you need crew? We do it all ourselves. And yeah, eventually we had like the high guard rules and everything. And I don't know if you've ever made a character using high guard or mercenary or any of those other books, but your skill point, you end up with a whole lot more skill points, especially when you're fudging the rolls like we did. And yeah, so back then it was either hand waved or we did it all ourselves and didn't worry about it. More mature gamer Joe does it as the book says, which is any gaps you have, you hire them as crew, and it's right in the book how much you would have to pay them. It's part of the ship's operating expenses. And so that works for me. It gives some NPCs. These days, I let the players also run those NPCs, which also serve as replacement characters should someone lose their character. So that's the way I do it today. Hey, Daniel, thank you very much for that call.
Hey, Jason here, just listening to episode 78 with Keith. Thank you for recording that. I really enjoyed hearing his thoughts about the Traveler character creation process, and I look forward to maybe hearing you create characters with him for other games. Take care. And also Heather, of course, if she's interested in doing that. But take care. Thank you for all that you do, and I'll talk to you soon.
Hey, Jason. Thanks for that call. Yeah, that's actually a pretty neat idea. There was a lot of shows we were having planned with James about generating characters for different systems. It might be interesting to have Keith do it, give him more exposure, give him more time on the mic. It's a little hard to schedule with him. I generally record on Saturday mornings, and he drives for Uber. So apparently Friday night's a big Uber night. So I don't know if that crimps into his schedule or anything. But yeah, that would be kind of neat. I want to do an episode where we generate a Lucky 7 character, so y'all can kind of see how that happens. I want to do an episode where we create, me and whoever, create a character for D&D using my Traveler-like rules, right? I would also love to do things like GURPS and Big Eye, Small Mouth, but a lot of that is, being skill-based games and no roles or anything, you'd just be listening to somebody think. I don't know how well that works, but yeah, I think it would be kind of cool. I think I'm going to approach Keith on that. See if he would be open to maybe one episode a month or something. All right. Hey, Jason, thanks a lot for that call. Hey, everyone. I have lots more feedback in the waiting for me, and I'm going to get to it, but this show's already at 20 minutes, and I've been doing a lot of long shows, and last week, instead of doing a regular feedback episode, I did the giveaway episode. That's okay. I'm covering more than is coming in, so I will definitely be able to catch up within another week or two. So if you didn't hear your message this week, just hold on. You'll hear it another week or two. If I had that clever little quote that Jason always plays on his show from Spike, I would play it right now. But, fair not. It will come. The only other one I want to talk about is I got one from Daniel. Every so often I get a feedback. It's happened with Jeff, it's happened with Jason, and now it's happened with Daniel, where I hear the message and I'm like, that would be a great episode all by itself. So I'm holding that one off to be its own episode. And I've reached out to Daniel, haven't heard back from him yet, but I've reached out to him to see if he wants to join me for that episode, because I think that would be kind of neat. So that's what's happening with that. Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your feedback. Please continue to send it. And I really, truly appreciate it. You are a great, great audience. In addition to regular feedback, if there's any topic ideas you ever want to hear or say, hey, I think you should do a show about this, send that in. I mean, I'm not hurting for topics. I have this huge list that James and I created when we started the show. A lot of those I paired off, with James supposedly doing his own show any day now. Put them off for him to use on his show. But I'm not hurting, but I do love it when y'all send me an idea and it strikes my interest just right. So, do all that. You know the routine, right? Feedback at decahedron.com. Feedback number is in the outro music. It's in the show notes. Sayhi.chat/decahedron. The boards at www.decahedron.com/boards. Or you can leave out /boards, and that's just the Decahedron landing page where all that information will be found anyway. Just remember to spell Decahedron with a K. Again, thanks for listening. Have a great week. And until next time, happy gaming, happy life. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Decahedron RPG Cast. We'd love to hear from you. You can leave us a voice message by calling 562-774-2278. That's 562-RPG-CAST. Or by visiting sayhi.chat/decahedron. You can also email us at feedback@decahedron.com. Links are in the show notes. For more information, visit decahedron.com. Remember that Decahedron is spelled with a K. Music is by Kevin MacLeod. Logos by Design Cat. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep those dice rolling.